Hello, all you hardcores. I'm joined by Julian today. You know the rest. How are you doing, Julian?
I'm struggling, Russell. Still getting over a very big fallout, apparently. You broke my heart, mate. Come on.
You're not in good form, I've heard.
I mean, I don't mind being in bad form, but we definitely haven't fallen out because I've not been on a couple of weeks. I've just been busy. Um,
I just say I like your tracksuit. You know what it reminds me of? Do you remember the Bionic Man?
Steve Austin.
He had the same tracksuit. I don't know if it was Puma, but he used to wear a tracksuit like that with striped, didn't he, on him?
Yeah, I bought this. I think I've had it about a year or something. I got it at the York retail outlet. You know, you can get pretty cheap stuff over there.
Yeah.
It was about 30, 40 quid. It's all right. It's a bit retro, mate. Yeah, I've been to the gym tonight. I've been training, and it's getting cold now as well. And it's an old school gym. There's no heating out like that. Just
Hmm.
only air conditioning you've got is windows being open, so it's a bit cold. So it's just a case of keep this on until I'm warmed up, and then crack on, mate. But yeah, I'm all good. We've just been chatting about. We've gone retro tonight, haven't we? We've been chatting about cars, hot hatches.
Hmm. That Subaru you had, did you miss it?
Yeah, I've had three Scoobies. I think the first one I got, I think I probably got it to annoy my wife, and I'm sure we can all relate to that because we're a bit childish at times, aren't we? And I can't remember what I had before the Subaru. I mean, you see photos of it, aren't you? And when I got the first one, I got an STI. I went with my brother to the Subaru garage. There used to be a Subaru garage in Lepton where I used to live, or near
Oh,
where I used to live. They couldn't give them away. Well, at that time when break-ins were really, really bad, I'm going to say it was about 10 years ago I bought it, I forget. And I told my wife at the time, I said, I'm thinking about getting a Subaru. So she says, as long as you don't get one with gold wheels, one of those stupid things on the bonnet, and then one of those picnic tables on the back, as long as you don't do those three things, I don't care what you get. So I went and I ticked all three boxes, didn't I? I got a Pro Drive Subaru. They were only 6 months old. Got a massive discount on it, massive discount for cash, and I loved it, mate. And then I had a couple more, and then I had a Litchfield spec, 408 horsepower proven, the one I sent you, the blue one, and just crackers, mate, crackers.
yeah, they are they're greedy though, aren't they? Only problem in it with them.
Yeah, the one I had, the last one I had was because it, like I said, it was a Litchfield spec, and it would only run on Shell V power,
Yeah.
and it did about 16 to gallon if I were
That's
lucky.
isn't it? That a litre, that isn't it?
It were crackers. So what I ended up doing was I ended up having it as a winter car, sorry, a summer car, only for 1 year, maybe 2 year. And then I was always been a bit of an RS fan, Ford RS fan. I'd had RS turbos in the day, Fiesta turbo. And I just got to the stage where I'm like, they were bringing out the new Subaru, or sorry, not Subaru, they've been talking about bringing out the new RS Focus Mark III for years. And I'd seen an ad where they were bringing it out, so I put a deposit down on one of them, and then as you know, I had the 8 months brand new, and I wrote it off, mate. You seen the photos just now, haven't you?
Can you just explain that accident to me? Because it's a bit crazy, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. I'd been to the gym. I was coaching amateurs at the time, ironically, and I'd had the RS about 8 months, and I had to wait 18 months on a waiting list for it as well. And as I was dropping down, coming out of Ekman, there's a well-known kind of dip, what's just a sunspot. And what had happened was there was a big truck, a big lorry had been parked up on the brow of a hill, shouldn't have been there. And the sun was lit, the lorry was exactly the same colour as the tarmac. It might sound silly, but you see the photographs. And
Yeah.
what happened was the
That way
sun
you
lit.
didn't get charged, you know, Mike, please.
Honestly, the police even said when they came that once I'd managed to recover, because it was quite a bad smash, they said it's created an optical illusion, and the sun had bounced off the truck, and it just looked like sun, and it blinded me. And as I was just dropping down, it suddenly went dark, And if I'd been going any more than about 25, 30, I'd have been dead. You seen the picture, and the corner of the truck has just pierced straight through the passenger seat. 2 or 3 inches to the right, I wouldn't have been here. And I just drove straight into the truck. It went.
Well,
It
that shook
went.
you up, didn't it?
Say again, Russell.
Well, it shook you up, didn't it?
Well, what happened was the RS at the time had like that remote safety thing in, so I could just hear the car talking to me, saying, "You've had the airbag came out, obviously, and it says you've had an accident. Can you get out of the car?" And car was smoking and all kinds of stuff. And I was a bit concussed and I didn't know what day it was. And there were a guy knocking on the window. I sensed a guy knocking on the window saying, "You need to get out. Your engine's on fire." And I think it was just a heater, but I didn't know at the time. And the car were counting down from 15 to 10. And then it dialed the police, and the car actually dialed the police and dialed the ambulance because I hadn't responded and I hadn't turned it off.
Oh,
and
it does it for you?
Yeah, it does it for you. So the RS literally remoted by where I was. It says that the airbag's been activated. If you don't deactivate it, emergency, we're going to call the police. So the police and an ambulance literally came. And it was bizarre, actually, because as the guy helped me out of the car, I was a bit all over the place, mate. It reminded me of being in my amateur days, being dropped. I was all over the place. And I went and sat at the side of the road. And the guy who was in the truck came out the garage and he just nipped in. He'd parked on the brow of a hill. He'd nipped in to get a sandwich, guy. And the guy who owned the petrol station came out and he recognised me. He says, "Are you Wayne's brother?" And I was a bit all over the place. I says, yeah. He said, "I've got your brother's number." And he rung our kid. And my brother's like me, he's a petrol head. And he come down, did Wayne, and he just says, "First of all, are you all right, bro?" But as he came, he says, there were like ambulances, police, the road off and the whole lot, mate. Very lucky to be alive. It happens. I was.
You lose your no claim.
No, I kept my no claims, but I don't care what they say. Your insurance still goes up, doesn't it? And the day after, I was going on holiday. I had to go to hospital. I was in a neck brace. Stayed overnight in, I think it's Huddersfield Infirmary, I forget. Stayed overnight. And then my brother come and picked me up from hospital. I'm going through a separation. So it was a good week, you split up, you write your car off. And my brother came for me the morning after and he says, "We've got to go to Halifax, that's where your car is." And you can't remember because it was all a bit nuts and they'd obviously moved the car on. And I said to my brother, I goes, "Do you think it's a write-off?" And he just went, "Yeah, I think so." And I went to Halifax with my brother and I went to this like depot, this salvage place. And they were just, my beautiful RS was just absolutely trashed, mate. And you saw it. It was a full spec. It had the buckets on, the 19s on, every single optional extra you can think of, it had. And I always promised myself when I was in my early 20s, I says one day, because I used to go to RS National Day every year. I still go, still follow RS Club and all that kind of stuff. And I said to myself in my early 20s, I says, one day I'm going to get a brand new RS. And I had one for about 8 months, mate. Smashed it up. Still look now and again thinking, should I? Do I get another one? But it'd never be the same, mate.
Yeah. Maybe it's what best there.
Yeah, look, you get older, don't you? I still get the twinkle in my eye when I see certain cars. See people think, I have a joke and think just normal Jules, but I like hot hatches, mate. I've got my weakness. I love Subarus.
80s, an 80s kid, aren't you?
Oh, proper 80s kid, mate. I love all that stuff. I watch all the car auctions online, and they have a lot of classic car auctions, and I still watch them on YouTube and think, I might go to one. There's only one reason I don't go to one, because I'll come back with something, mate. And I'm wanting to move house next year. Had an expensive divorce, and you get to the stage, it's like I just can't justify it. But if I went to one of these car auctions, mate, I'd come back with a Peugeot 205 1.9 or a Brooklands Capri, or I'd say I'd come back with a Mark 1 RS 2000, but you need a
Let's
rubber
go,
band,
Harry.
don't you?
Let's go, Harry.
Those are crazy money. I'd love a Mexico.
Mark one.
Yeah, Mark 1. I'd love a Mexico. I'd love anything like that. I'd love. And at some point, I promised myself one, but priorities and all that, mate. But yeah, I'm a proper petrol head.
Yeah, go on.
I'm a petrol head, and me and my brother in the day, we had our cars in Fast Forward magazine. My brother always did the concourse thing. He's a bit OCD, he's our kid, and he's had various cars in various Fast Forward magazines and Max Power and all that kind of stuff. He used to have. I had a Fiesta RS Turbo, and our kid, he had an Escort RS Turbo, and believe it or not, I think I sent you the photos of it. He tracked his old RS Escort down last year, and we were going to buy the car. We tracked it down. A guy had restored it, and we were going to buy it. And it was in good nick, but it needed a few bits and bobs, and we thought about it. But
trouble, aren't you? You need time for stuff like that.
You're buying trouble, and also there's the fact that me and my brother are really close. But can you really share a car?
No, you'd be at it, wouldn't you?
You'd be at it. You see, I've always had nice cars, and I've always believed in driving them. My brother's always had nice cars, and he garages them. He don't drive them. He polishes underneath the car. You know, all that kind of stuff. He shows them, and the car he's got at the moment, I think he's had it about 18 months, and he's done about 100 mile or something like that, 200 mile. He's not done a lot in it, and you know, he's just a working man, but that's his passion, that's his hobby. So we'd have argued.
You and your Wayne have argued, wouldn't you?
Yeah, we'd have argued. I'd have been saying, "Oh, I'm having it this weekend. I'm taking it out," and I'd have just gone for a spin and just left it in McDonald's car park or something. And our kid, he couldn't have stood it. He couldn't have stood it. But I think the guy at the time wanted about 14 grand for it. So we talked about it, and then he were quite honest with it. He says it's probably going to need it needs a twin cam. It needed some new cams. And there were a couple of other things. And like you just said, you're buying a piece of history and nostalgia because it was my brother's old car, what he got rid of. Babies come along and all that kind of thing.
Bits are hard to get and all sorts. There's all sorts.
Yeah, you're buying trouble. You're buying a lot of trouble. I mean, even in the day that I'm going to get this wrong. Were the Mark III Escorts then? Yeah, they were. Mark II weren't the 86 to 92, I think. They were Mark IIs. And
Mark III, innit?
Mark one were the white one. What Princess Diana had one. And I think, yeah, the Escort, what he had, his might have been an 87 model. You forget, but it was the old CSV engine. And Andy knows all this stuff, doesn't he? And they weren't the most reliable anyway. And we'd have fallen out, mate. But at some point, I'll get something. But not yet. I ain't got the money yet. We don't just do boxing on Porky's Corner, mate, do we?
Well, no, we do live stories and all that, don't we? Your Wayne reminds me of this bird I used to go out with. She had this house, and I said, how come we can't go in room? This room was like immaculate. Every time I went out to her house, we sat in the fucking kitchen. See what's going on here? What are you hiding in there? Oh, it's spotless. Yeah, well, we need to be in there, don't we? Get telly on and that. I'm sick of keeping in here. Oh,
well, you've been here, Russell. I'm a little bit like that myself, just not as bad as my brother with cars. That's all.
You're only man, aren't you? You're like Frotch. I'm telling you, with OCD.
I've got my t-shirts in colour order and all that. I know it's a bit.
I know in your wardrobe and which spaces between them. So if you don't, what people forget is right. You know, when you've got your wardrobe and it's chock-a-block, your clothes need to have a gap between each shirt to breathe. Otherwise, they get moths in and all that, don't they? And blah blah blah. But I noticed that about you. If I go in my wardrobe now, if there's loads of stuff in there. Say if there's 50 shirts in there and they're in, but if there is, wardrobe's only big enough for 20. But I've squeezed 50 and they can't breathe in there. Do you know what I mean? But yours is all like spaced out. You've got issues.
Yeah,
mate.
It's spaced out, mate. 5, 6 pairs of jeans, 20 t-shirts, all spaced out. Black ones to the back, then the blue, then the grey, then the bright colours, then the white, then the lights. Yeah.
Well, listen, I can see now why you got divorced, Julian. No offence. You drove her mad, didn't you?
Oh, I'm not easy to live with, mate. Poor Anna. When I get married again, yeah, poor Anna. She's got it coming, hasn't she? But she's pretty tidy anyway, so she don't have to worry about anything.
We'll say a
I'm
prayer
not.
for
I'm
her.
not like the what was the film? Sleeping with the Enemy, Julia Roberts.
Oh, he had it bad with soup in cupboards and that, didn't he?
With soup and beans and stuff. I'm not that bad.
You're
I
aware?
think I'm just clean. I'm just clean, mate. I'm just clean. That's all it is.
Right. I want to talk about David Benavidez and how good is he?
It's one of those things, isn't it? We're in the UK. I think was the fight at the weekend on PCB.
Mm.
So it's one of those that it kind of goes under the radar with UK fans unless you're a true hardcore, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I've seen the highlights of the fight. I mean, I thought Andrade was inactivity. I preach about inactivity. It's a curse, isn't it? It's an absolute curse. And he's not been the most active, has he? But he's such an impressive fighter, isn't he? Benavidez is just such he throws all the shots. He's tough, and he's big for the weight. He's imposing. I'm not massively well versed on his background and everything he's been doing, but yeah, it's what I've always said to you, isn't it? People might say, "Oh no, come on, you get to a stage where you get the great fighters like Canelo Alvarez. The last thing they want is someone like that.
Well, he's not going to go nowhere near him, Canelo.
Young, unbeaten, throws all the shots, big at the weight, strong as hell, fearless, and he's yet to kind of get to that mountain summit, hasn't he? Yeah, he's obviously, unbeaten and they win these various belts that they give up, but he's not at the summit of the mountain yet, is he? He's not that big number one star in boxing. And when you're Canelo Alvarez, the last thing you want is a kid like that. You just don't want it because he's going to give more than you in that fight. He's got less to lose and more to gain. So you can see why Canelo is going to go certain routes, but I can't see him. I'm not suggesting, by the way, before we get lynched, Canelo wouldn't beat him, but I think he's just too much of a live wire at this point.
Whereas 28-0, 24 by weight, 24 KOs, 26-year-old has done 4 world champions.
There you go.
He's on his way in here. 26-year-old.
And when you watch him, I just saw the highlights of his last couple of fights, and he just throws that many punches. But he's what I would call a fighter who does the under, over, and around. When he throws his shots, like a lot of the fighters, you can read the shots, can't you? Like you get like even great fighters, like certain fighters like Lennox would always be jab, 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 cross, jab, 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 cross, hook, half step back, right uppercut. But Benavidez is kind of that what I call, like I said, the under, the over and around is you never know what he's throwing. He mixes them up so well. So he'll throw a right uppercut and then throw a right hook on the end of that, which is quite unusual. And it's just the volume and the shots. When a shot's going over, around, under, around, over, you never know when they're coming from. And Aaron Pryor was the same. Remember Aaron Pryor? I'm not saying this is the same style, but when someone's constantly throwing shots when you're tired and they just pop, 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 pop. Yeah. That's really, really hard to beat. And
Aaron Pryor were hard to beat, wasn't he?
Because you never knew what he was going to throw, because he never knew what he was going to do next in Pryor, did he? He was so unorthodox. And I'm not saying Benavidez has got that style, but it reminds me the way he can throw every single punch.
From every angle with power.
Yeah, certain fighters are known for certain combinations or certain shots, but he can throw every single punch. And he just doesn't stop, does he? He's just non-stop. Once he's got you going, once he smells that blood, is a force, and it looks really, really good.
I remember about a year ago, Gary kept going on about him. Gary at Welcome Estates kept going on about him to me.
A year ago, I'd not really become.
Pardon?
I'm the same as you. A year ago, I'd not really watched much of him.
Well, I knew who we were, and I'd seen a few fights with him, but I wasn't there wasn't loads of hype around him. But Gary kept going on about him, and it was like every week he kept going on about him to me now. And I kept thinking, yeah, he's all right, but He's turned into a great fighter, hasn't he?
He's looking brilliant, isn't he? He's looking really, really brilliant.
And I've heard John Ryder's name's been thrown into the mix by the Essex Anthill mob today as well. I mean, John Ryder, this is how I look at it. I don't want to stick it to John Ryder, but let's have it right. He's not got a British title to his name, has he? He's not got a European. So he's not. All he's got is a couple of trinket belts. He's trained by Sims, managed by Charlie Sims. Obviously, Tony trains him. Charlie manages him. Yeah, he's in there with all that lot. This is how I look at it. We get Chisora stick, don't we? Right, for loads of losses and being knocked about and all that. John Ryder would be took to meat market if he fought him, wouldn't it be a slaughter, wouldn't it?
Well, John Ryder's one of those fighters who is strong, he's tough. He does everything quite well, but nothing brilliant. But he's certainly not a defensive genius, is he? He's not a slick southpaw. He's not a southpaw who's going to give you problems. And even Andrade, and Andrade was a guy who was not the easiest fighter to hit, and it didn't cause a problem, did it? As soon as he closed him down, and it wouldn't be progress, would it, for Benavidez to fight
John Ryder out because it's the end of his career now, John Ryder. And we know what these people like to. They want to cash Katie Taylor out at Croke Park, but and the business people aren't. But this is how I look. Right, John Ryder, he'll be up for it. He's had a big Canelo payday, so he's had a taste of big dough. He'll want some big dough, but everybody and the dad around John Ryder will be lumping on him to get torn apart in that fight. Torn apart.
And they're not bothered, mate. They'll get a hiding. They'll get paid a lot of money. And I mean, this is the problem, isn't it? Once you get to this level, and I'm not saying he's at that level, but he's had that level, he's had that high level fights. You know, he's fought the good guys. He hasn't beaten them, but he's fought, well, generally hasn't beaten them. He's fought the good guys. But now you've had that. No, he's not 1-0, but now you've had that Canelo money. What is he going to do? Drop down domestically and for 100 grand on a DAZN show? He's not going to do that, is he?
No, well, he's coming up 36 now, John Ryder. So he'll be wanting to cash out, won't he?
Yeah, and that's what they'll do. They'll cash him out. They'll get him beat up, and as long as he lives to tell the tale, they'll say they've done their job, and he'll finish comfortably with a few quid in bank and some financial security. And I get it, but the matchmakers and the promoters and the managers and the trainers are always braver than the fighters, aren't they?
Well, they'll be stuck up in that boxing asylum if he fights Benavidez, won't they?
He'll just get smashed to pieces, doesn't he? I mean, he is a nice guy, isn't he? He's not a loud mouth. He's someone he's got that kind of blue collar work thing about him, hasn't he? That blue collar work ethic about him.
But is he going to be one of them pushing 40, talking like Derek Chisora? Is that what?
Well, you wonder, don't you? I don't know if he's been active enough to do that, but you do wonder. I mean, my memory fades sometimes, but was he a little bit unlucky against Callum Smith from memory?
Yeah, and no, I suppose.
It was a close fight, wasn't it?
Don't get me arguing about close fights or referees. Jeez,
But you can't define a career based on close fights and losing close fights, can you? It's not. Ultimately, it's about getting the win, isn't it? Your career is remembered by who you beat, not by who you gave a hard fight to.
Yeah. I remember when he got in with Canelo, people were saying, well, who's his best win? Zach Parker, Daniel Jacobs. You know.
I mean, in fact, now I do remember that. The Daniel Jacobs one wasn't a great decision, was it?
Well, he won, didn't he?
But I'm sure Jacobs. I don't think it was the most memorable fight, but I think a lot of people thought Jacobs got robbed in that fight.
Well, it was on an Eddie show, and he's Eddie's man in it, and he's trained by.
I think I watched it. The reason I'm saying I think is because I'm like these days with boxing. If I'm not that interested in the fight, I'll watch it casually. And I think I watched that fight, and I didn't get him beat by a couple of rounds, but again, my memory fades.
Yeah, but he beat Rocky Fielding and got robbed for that one, didn't he?
Rocky Fielding, I mean, is a domestic level fighter who, by virtue of the ridiculous situation we have with regular belts and all this kind of stuff, got gifted a world title. No disrespect to Rocky Fielding, but we saw what happened when he fought Canelo, didn't we? And that was the difference between a world elite fighter and a guy who was domestic level who just looked in. And that's not being disrespectful to Rocky Fielding, but Rocky Fielding was domestic level, and I don't care what anybody says.
Paul Smith were put in with that guy Rocky Fielding, got the belt off. He had an opportunity to be a world champion, gifted, dropped on his lap, didn't he? And Zuga and Paul Smith balls it up, didn't he?
Paul Smith was domestic level. People always get offended when you say that. There's nothing wrong with domestic level fighters. I used to train one. But what people will always say when you say domestic level, they'll say, he was ranked number 6 by the IBF, and they'll give you some ranking as though that's some proof that look, I don't think people understand what being world. When I say people, I'm just talking about casuals. You know, you talk about the thing world class. Being world class is not the same thing as being world ranked. We know this, don't we? The way that the politics of boxing works, you can be world ranked and not world class. Now, everybody's got their own distinction and their own definition of what world class means. For me, what world class means is a world class fighter can compete at the top level. That's what a world class fighter can do. That's not to say that a guy who's 7 or 8 and he's probably the 7th or 8th best fighter in the world, he would generally be considered world class. That's not to say that he can always beat the number 1 and number 2, but he should at least be able to be competitive with the elite fighters. And that's what it means to be world class. Now, Paul Smith was not world class. Paul Smith was a strong, tough guy, British title level. He got wiped out by Groves and De Gale, again, as they were coming through the ranks. And by virtue of an unlucky decision against a very, very, I don't know if he fought him once or twice, I forget, a kind of an aging Arthur Abrahams doesn't make you world class, in my opinion.
Let me just stop you there. After that fight, the pundits on Sky turned to Joe Gallagher and said, "How did you have it, Joe?" And he said, the trainer of Paul Smith at the time, aka son of Buddy, he said to the future son of Buddy McGirt, "I thought it were a draw," and that was from Joe G, his trainer. So even Joe Gallagher didn't think he won, Abraham.
But it becomes folklore, doesn't it? I'm not hammering Paul Smith because
in Paul Smith's head.
Very decorated fighter, and the Smiths are incredibly decorated. But Paul Smith was a domestic level fighter. If you are a world class fighter, you don't get ironed out in 2 rounds by George Groves, do you?
No.
You don't have tough fights with the Tony Dodsons of this world, and some of the journeymen that he fought, he'd life and deaths with them. That's not a world class fighter, is it? A world class fighter will go through that level of opposition like they're nothing. So all I'm saying is, we're talking about John Ryder, but for me, world class doesn't mean you have a world ranking. Anyone who thinks that, then it's nonsense, because that means by definition, every fighter in the top 12 of all the 4 organisations, they're all world class. Well, we know they're not, don't we?
I remember when I worked for Dennis, Liam Cameron were ranked with IBF number 11 or 12. Josh Whale were in top 15. Who else were there? Tommy Frank were in ranked in top 10. It doesn't mean the world class, does it? But if you say that,
well, you could argue they're not even remotely in the top 5 in Britain, can't you? Josh was British champion, but it's not being harsh. It's just saying as it is, and this is the politics of boxing, and this is called buying rankings, isn't it? You lobby to get your fighter ranked.
You don't lobby, you pay.
Well, you lobby, you pay.
They give you an invoice. They say, "Look, how much is it going to be for my guy to be top 10?" And they say, "It's going to be this much."
Listen, I'm as brutally honest as it comes, right? And I've seen this firsthand. You know, Gary Sykes got offered the Adrian Broner fight for the WBO Super Featherweight Championship. At that time, Sykes wasn't ranked. I spoke to Gary's manager at the time. Said, "But Gary's not ranked. I was going to fight for, don't worry about that." Gary then appeared as number 8 in the next rankings by the WBO at super featherweight. Now, Gary was a good domestic level operator. He could have been even more than that. No one's closer to Sykes than me, but Sykes wasn't world class. And he hadn't done anything to deserve that ranking. But because they wanted a UK opponent for Adrian Broner to break him through more to the UK market, Sykes was one of the 5 British fighters who was the first one to say yes.
Well, there are a few said no to Broner. I know who did. Ricky Burns said no, didn't he?
Burns said no. Stephen Smith said no. Buckland said no. And Derry Matthews all said no. Now, if anyone attacks me...
As well, I'm surprised at that because he's a massive puncher, wasn't he?
I'm just going to say, if anybody attacks me, I might be wrong on Derry, but there were 4 or 5 big domestic operators at the time who were asked to fight Broner before Sykes. Sykes being a true fighter, and the dream was to fight for a world title. Gary said yes. I'm not saying all 4 or 5 didn't have legitimate reasons, but is there a legitimate reason for not fighting for a world title?
Gone out there and put it on him, Gary, wouldn't he?
Yeah, the only one I'm questioning is what did Derry actually, because Derry might not have been offered that. He might have been a lightweight at the time, like Derry. So forgive me, Derry Matthews, if I got that wrong. But the others were asked. The other super featherweights were asked. Buckland was asked. They will say they weren't asked, but they were asked, and Sykes said yes. Because think about it, Gary's not going to be the number 1 pick, is he, for a British opponent for Broner?
Why not?
No, but he's not going to be, is he? Because he didn't have a belt. He'd lost against Buckland a couple of times. So ideally, there was a pecking order, and he was down that pecking order, but he was the first one to say yes.
Yeah. You put a comment earlier saying about how boxing is in 2024. People in the UK now are not wanting to fight anybody because they're waiting for the Saudi, whatever. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people now, and you're one of them, saying fighters are waiting for the Saudi money. They're sat protecting rankings, they're sat protecting unbeaten records, because they all think there's going to be this pot of, and I think you're right in what you're saying, they all think there's going to be this pot of gold.
People in South Yorkshire think it. People around here think the way.
What I'm saying is this risk-averse approach is nothing new. Fighters for the past 10, 15 years, since time began, since I've really started following this, not since time began, I've been protecting. This is a routine what people do, right? You get the kids who come from GB, who are the popular ones. They have a good social media following. They go via Matchroom, they go via Sky maybe, or they go via DAZN, okay? They go via Queensbury. Then you get all these other fighters who are on non-TV deals, and they start to box on the small shows. And I'm seeing kids time after time after time who are 10-0, 11-0, 12-0, 15-0, 16-0, and they haven't got one win against anybody with a winning record. So it's not just the big name fighters that are waiting to get on the Saudi bills. You've also got a load of unbeaten kids out there. Some of them can fight. Some of them can fight. Some of them can't fight. They've all got 5 or 6 sponsors. They're walking around, team this, team that, team this, team that. And they're sat there protecting unbeaten records. And these unbeaten records mean absolutely nothing whatsoever. And they're all waiting to get on the Matchroom shows. And everybody on the Matchroom shows are waiting to get on the Saudi shows. And in the meantime, up until recently, we're not seeing 50-50 fights. We're not seeing competitive fights. But most importantly, we're not seeing fighters develop. Because generally how things used to go is you either broke through domestically or you didn't. And if you couldn't break through domestically, you weren't going to get to the European level. Then you weren't going to cross the continent and get, to dominate the Americans or whoever. And I think it's a harm in boxing, it's shaming boxing. But thankfully at the moment, the one thing that we are getting, and Eddie was the one who was saying now, there's no easy fights now. And I like Eddie's strategy, but is he doing that because data's telling him people walking away from boxing in their droves? Or has he suddenly had a change of heart and he no longer wants to bring kids back from losses? or inactivity and put them in fights against overseas opponents who are truly dismal. So what we are seeing now, Russell, we're starting to see this new trend, which I think is absolutely brilliant. But we're seeing kids, right? For example, not on the non-TV shows, but on the matchroom shows. We had the Northeast, the Newcastle show a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we're getting kids who finally have been stepped up. And what's happening is we're seeing upsets, aren't we?
Massive upsets, aren't we?
We're seeing upsets because they haven't learned to box, because they've been protected, and all of a sudden they're fighting kids who can't fight. And then all of a sudden you fight someone who can fight, even just a little bit, and we're seeing upsets. And we saw, I can't remember the names now of the couple of kids who got beat on the Northeast show a few weeks ago. One of them was the ex-GB kid, his name will come back to me. And it's like, people are getting found out, but the only way you learn is in competitive fights. It's the only way you learn. Gary Sykes had his fair share of journeyman, but as it was developing, he also thought kids were winning records really early on.
He done well though, Gary, didn't he? Really, he could have done a lot better.
He did well. He could have done a lot better, but ultimately, he's 2 British titles and English titles, not bad, is it?
Yeah. Getting back to that, what you were on about people protecting the records. Campbell Hatton's 14-0 now, and he's only 22-year-old. Campbell, his name's not answer phone though. It says on here, Campbell Hurricane Hatton. He's a hurricane.
Yeah. He's not blown over that much if he's a hurricane, is he? I'm not knocking him. I think he's a lovely kid, but we know that the thing with Campbell Hatton's getting a little bit quicker, a little bit stronger, a little bit more experienced, a little bit faster. But what he's not doing, what he hasn't developed at all, he has got zero defense, like none. Any shot, whatever goes in the direction of Campbell Hatton's head, hits him. Doesn't matter what it is. Jab, cross, hook.
Well, just like his dad.
He's got zero defense, but he doesn't have his dad's physicality and his dad's core strength. And that's why he's effectively been avoiding punches. Because, you know, if you think of like Campbell's, was his second fight, was really fortunate to win. Now, imagine if you got such a leaky defense, if you fight someone who's got some power, it's going to end really, really badly for Campbell Hatton, really badly. They'll manoeuvre him to English titles and I'm sure area titles and against kids with 3 KOs, 4 KOs. But, you know, people say, oh, he's only a baby, he's only this, he's only that. He had 30 odd amateur fights. No, he's not exactly a novice, is he, with 30 odd amateur fights?
No.
And how many pro fights?
14-0. 5 by way of.
So he's had nearly 50 fights, hasn't he, amateur and pro, and he's got the best of everything.
Better punching KO ratio than Big John Fury and Paulie Malignaggi and Sven Otka.
Yeah, but he really is against the puncher. He's going to get opened up something chronic. But he's a nice kid, trains hard, is modest, not a dickhead. I like him, but he's certainly not going to get to British titles or anything like that.
Crusher Ben's
not everybody can, by the way. Sorry, not everybody can, by the way.
Crusher Ben's calling out Boots, seeing this. There's a lot of talk and a lot of websites today about it. What do you think?
Name association. Said it before. I think we're running out of time, Russell, but name association, mate. That's what Crusher Ben's doing. Call out now the big guns, because he's called out all the old guys. Now he's calling out the young guns. But who is he actually fighting?
Exactly. Nobody. Is he serving a silent ban? The people in the know are saying he could be till April. His 2-year UK silent. Is that true?
I think there's a very good chance that he is.
I think that's why they're dragging it on and on and on and on. And keep saying, oh, it's another month or not, because it's 6 weeks or 2.
They'll be hoping to shorten that ban, won't they?
Yeah, they'll be trying to get it down to 21 months January, won't they?
Absolutely.
Okie dokie.
Right, buddy.
Right,
nice
care, mate.
See you later, mate. Cheers, Russell.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for liking and subscribing and leaving a comment. Booyaka. Peace out.